go right now. I want to go to Washington. He celebrates his 30th year in the United States Senate come 2011. He's Charles Grassley, and of course with him, our Peter Cook.
Tom, thanks very much. Joined here by Senator Charles Grassley, the top Republican on the Finance Committee. Appreciate, as always, the time here.
Thank you.
So many issues here in this lame duck session, but there is such a focus on the Bush tax cuts. And we spoke with Senator Durbin earlier, says there's still time for a compromise, but chiding Republicans to essentially sit down at the table. Where do things stand right now?
Right now, the only bill that's introduced has been introduced by Senator McConnell, our Republican leader, and it seems to be one that every Republican has been behind philosophically as well as practically for the last several months. We think that one of the things about the economy that is out there that we aren't hiring is the word uncertainty. And part of the uncertainty is this big tax increase that could happen if we don't act. And so we Republicans feel that the best certainty we can give to business is to make sure that the present tax law, not more cuts, but not to have an increase if we do nothing, is made permanent.
As you know, the president, Democrats here, they are insisting that extend only for the middle income Americans. Those households earning less than $250,000 a year. If they put a bill on the floor that only advances that, doesn't extend for high-end earners, is Chuck Grassley going to vote in favor of that?
No, and I don't think any other Republican will, and there's quite a few Democrats now that won't. There was at least 5 or 6 Democrats back in September said that that was the wrong policy, and there were 40-some Democrats in the House that signed a bill saying that that was not good policy for the economy. What we believe is that the president ought to believe exactly what he said approximately let's say January, just before he was sworn in. He said, I ran on a policy of increasing taxes on higher income people, but we shouldn't increase taxes when we're in a recession. Well, you know what? We're still in a recession, and shouldn't the president abide by the same thing he thought was good policy about 18 months ago?
Well, Senator Grassley, Tom Keene in New York here, and I'm thinking about you're one of the few people without the fancy degree, the fancy background. You were a metal bender out of Iowa. Today we see the ultimate metal bender, General Motors, coming back. What do we need to bring manufacturing back to the United States? What do we need to do to bring that innovation back?
Well, first of all, not tax energy like the cap and trade bill will do. Now, I think that's behind us, but that was one of the big things out there that if we had passed that, we would lose all of our manufacturing to China. The second thing is to make the R&D tax credit permanent. A third thing would be to have a product liability tort reform legislation passed. And the other one would be to get the EPA off of this road that they're going down to do away with a lot of fossil fuel generation of electricity, because the more you do that, the more you're going to increase the cost of production.
Let me jump in and ask you about the Deficit Commission. Some of the ideas that we've talked about already, ideas about reducing overall government spending. What do you make of what Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson, your former colleague here, have put forward, specifically when it comes to overhaul the tax code? They're talking about reducing overall rates, but at the same time, getting rid of every single possible tax break out there. What do you make of that?
Well, there is a rule of thumb that I think is legitimate, that when you reduce marginal tax rates, you can broaden the tax base that is applicable. In other words, have the marketplace make more decisions instead of having decisions made by politicians here in Washington of certain things that ought to have a priority. So there is a good rule of thumb. And how far down do you want to reduce the marginal tax rates? If you can get them down to 25% or less, there is a legitimacy for doing away with some tax exemption.
Do you think there's 60 senators here who could support what Erskine Bowles and Alan Simpson are talking about here?
Nobody's going to take it very seriously until they see if it gets 14 out of the 18 members of the commission to sign it.
You think that's a reasonable possibility?
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable possibility, not based upon what ought to be done to the tax code, but based upon the fact that we are on a path to tripling the national debt, going from a 50-year average of 35% of the gross national product being the national debt. We're on a path to tripling that. We can't continue on that path, or this generation, new generation, is not going to have an increase in the standard of living. So what they're talking about, getting the deficit down, is the most important thing in that work of that commission.
Now, I want to continue with right now, of course, there's so many questions about the commission, whether or not it's going to gain any traction here. What is your sense right now about the appetite in this Congress, given the results of the election, for those kinds of difficult spending cuts? There are people talking about cutting defense spending for the first time in years.
Yeah. Well, of course, there will be a cut in defense expenditures because what we're spending in Iraq and Afghanistan will just automatically go away. It's not built into the base, and it shouldn't be built into the base. But there is a certain level of defense expenditures that has to do. But I think everybody agrees that when you give bonuses to defense contractors when they're over budget and underperforming, that something's wrong. But I think also that Secretary Gates is a good person taking us down this road, and if we listen to him, it's going to be done in a reasonable way so we still have a strong national defense.
Senator Grassley, something I think so important here, and Peter Cook mentions the appetite in Congress. What would you like to see out of the leadership of the new House majority, the House Republicans? What do you need to see from them to bring together, I think of the days of Scoop Jackson and others, what do we need to find a middle ground?
Well, I think, first of all, it's a little more difficult to answer your question for the House of Representatives. But I think if you remember the 30 years prior to the last 2 years, when the membership of the Senate was inside 55-45, and it takes 60 votes to get anything done in the United States Senate, then I think you have a built-in mode of bringing about bipartisanship. But it isn't just the sake of bipartisanship. What you have to do to get anything done is bring a little common sense to find common ground. And I think that can be done. And I don't think anybody expects either political party to compromise their principles. But within those principles, I think we can find common ground. And I think also you want to remember that when it's 53-47, it's not just a case of getting 7 of another political party to get something done. Usually you end up with 15 or 20 of one political party going along with, let's say, 35 or 40 of the other political party. And that's the way you get it. But the institution brings it around. But now you got to remember, though, that the people that brought about this big change, the biggest change in the makeup of Congress since 1938, that they expect certain things to be done in an uncompromising way.
Right.
And most of that's on expenditures.
Well, Senator Grassley, we've got to leave it right there. We thank you for your time.
Well,
as always, Chuck Grassley, the Republican from Iowa, talking about a range of issues. Tom, taxes, still the hot topic here on Capitol Hill.
Great. Peter Cook, thank you so much. And to the Senator, thank you. Coming up.